Afternoon, everyone. So thank you so much for joining our first workshop of Edinburgh's Business Festival. Before we get properly started and move into the presentations, hopefully you all got a little notification on arrival, but it's just to remind you that this session is being recorded. So if you would rather not be included in the recording, please keep your camera off. Otherwise, I think that's us good to go. If you joined our sessions earlier this morning as part of Edinburgh's Business Festival, I hope you enjoyed them. This is the first workshop. We started off with a keynote session. Apologies, that's my YouTube playing in the background there. So yeah, I hope you found the sessions useful this morning if you joined them, and I really hope that you learn a lot from this session over the next hour. As you hopefully know, our theme for this year is moving forward with purpose, and this particular event will be looking at how we communicate our purpose with customers and clients, which I'm sure we can all agree is very important. I'm delighted to be joined today by Victoria Allison, who's the Creative Director at the STV Group, and Victoria will take us through a presentation over roughly the next 30 minutes, and then we'll have some time for Q&A towards the end. So please, if you do think of any questions during the presentation, pop them into the chat box. I think it's quite a nice group size. We can either bring you in at the end to ask the question live, or we can pose the question to Victoria on your behalf. So on to Victoria. So Victoria leads the STV Creative Commercial, which is the award-winning creative agency within STV's commercial division, specialising in creating razor-sharp ad campaigns that get brands noticed on STV. She heads up a busy team, very busy by the sounds of it, encompassing creative, production, campaign management, design and post-production. Victoria oversees an average of 150 campaigns a year for a diverse range of clients, from first-time advertisers embarking on their very first spot campaign to national and international brands seeking to align themselves with the STV brand and resonate with a Scottish audience. So we're very much looking forward to hearing from you, and I'll hand over to Victoria, and please get ready with your questions for the session at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emma, for that introduction. I'm really delighted to be here today to chat to you all. I'm just going to share my screen, if you bear with me for one moment, and get some slides up. There we are. So because I'm sharing my screen, I can't actually see you. So if anything goes awry, you should be seeing everything okay. But if anything goes awry with the slides, or they don't move on, or we have any technical hitches as we go, please do shout out and let me know. So today I'm going to be talking about communicating your purpose to your audience, or marketing with purpose. It's really, really important. I know for some of you today, you will already have purpose at the core of your business. So it's probably very intrinsic to what you do in terms of your operations, your day-to-day. You're perhaps just looking for a little bit of insight into how you can talk to your audience and engage with your audience on the subject. However, I'm also mindful that for some of you, purpose maybe hasn't always been at the forefront of what you do, and that is absolutely okay. You're perhaps at that stage where you're wanting to bring it and pull it through forward more to the forefront. So you might be working through identifying your purpose at the moment. And again, I'll help you a little bit with that today as well, and talk to you about how you can communicate with your audience on that subject. Seem to have fallen at the first hurdle. My slides have frozen. Just going to come out. There we are. Can everyone still see that okay?
No, it doesn't seem to be sharing at the moment.
Oh dear. Okay. This is the joy of Zoom. Sorry, bear with me, everyone.
That's us back. That's perfect.
Perfect. So I thought I would start really quickly by telling you a little bit about myself and STV, where I come from. I'm sure if you live in Scotland, you know STV very well. We connect with over 3 million Scots a month on our broadcast channel. In terms of our purpose, it's to be the home of entertainment and news in Scotland. And the way that we embody that through what we do is by serving high quality content in those areas to our audiences, both via our broadcast channel, online, and on VOD as well. So for us, I wanted to share STV0 with you because social purpose is a very important part of what we do as well at Scotland's broadcaster. And STV0 is one of our corporate social responsibility initiatives that we launched last year. And it's around sustainability. This is our commitment to becoming carbon net zero by 2030. And we actually, in the run up to COP26 last year, we launched our own comms and marketing campaign to our audience to tell them about what we were trying to do around this topic in this space, and what our credentials were and what we were hoping to achieve. So we had a campaign that involved on-air promos with our beloved weatherman Sean Batty, where we took him to the future and aged him. And we celebrated some of the great things our audience were already doing through these promos. We also partnered with Smart Energy, which is a non-profit, and with them we created content for broadcast and for a green hub which sat on the STV player to help bring our audience on the journey with us. So obviously marketing, our purpose, is very close to our hearts, and it's also something we've had to work through very recently in terms of how we do it for this new initiative at STV. So some of the tips I'm going to share with you today are things that we've already learned as we've been through this process. Sorry, I'm a little stuck on the slides again. So just a quick run through of what I'm going to cover today on purpose-led marketing. I'm going to keep it really simple: what, why, and how. So as we go, I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to give you some tips. We work with a lot of first-time advertisers as well. So we obviously help our clients with their purpose-led campaigns. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the work that we've done and some of the campaigns that we've created for clients who we've helped identify their purpose and how they communicate it to their audience. But also I'm going to pull in some what I would call kind of gold standard, best in class brands and campaigns from other big national and international brands who are real leaders in this area, and that's really to inspire us a little bit today. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to pull through from that what you can take away from these big brands for your business, incorporating your comms as well. So I'll kick off with defining your purpose, and this is the real key first step to brands trying to communicate with their audience on purpose. It feels really simple and it's quite an existential statement to make, finding your purpose, but it's really key, and you do have to nail down that before you start speaking to your audience about it and really clarify it for yourself and for your business. So what your purpose is can be quite tricky for businesses to actually work out and identify, particularly if you're not one of these businesses that has purpose at the core of what you do, and you've not been established as a purpose-led business necessarily, but you want to now pull that through into what you're doing. So there are some ways that we can do that. And the first way to identify what your purpose is and work it out is to ask yourself, what matters to you? What matters to you as a business, and why do you do what you do? There's a few other questions that pull through from that you can work through. Why did you establish your business? What did you want to change in the world by doing it? What does it mean to you? But this is a really important first thing for you to identify in your journey. And then the next question is to ask, what matters to your audience? And this is a real key thing for you to think about as well, because that intersection between those two questions, what matters to you and what matters to your audience, is where your purpose lies. And that's what you should be communicating to your consumer. So a lot of our clients, ask whether they can still have purpose and they can still communicate purpose to their audience if it's not social purpose as such. And that's an absolute yes. General purpose still exists, and it's a real key thing. That's still your why. Why do you exist? And why do you do what you do? And that still really matters to your audience, even if it isn't social purpose as such, and if you weren't established as a social purpose business. What you will find is often when you get really clear on your general purpose and why you do what you do, that will cascade, and there will be social purpose elements that you can pull through from that. Now, the next real key question is, we know what purpose is, but why does it matter? And I've got a few stats for you, for those of you who like stats, because I think it's always really important to be able to back up what you're saying in this arena. So 62% of consumers want companies to stand up for the issues they are passionate about. And these stats are from the Accenture Strategy Survey. 64% find brands that actively communicate their purpose more attractive than those who do not. So that's a key decision-making driver when people go to purchase. 88% of consumers want to know that the brands they are supporting have got a real impact. And this is from the One Pulse survey that was done for Futura in November 2018. So this was actually done pre-pandemic, and this shows how important purpose was and communicating purpose was for consumers. Even before that, it's even more important now. Ultimately, purpose equals growth, because brands that are considered to have positive impact grow at twice the rate of those who do not. This is from Kantar's 2020 purpose survey. So ultimately, purpose and communicating your purpose is good for you. It's not only good for you in terms of your your soul, you're attracting of talent to your business and great like-minded people, but it's actually also a very important way for you to be able to grow your business and to attract consumers. So we're sold on purpose and communicating it to our audience. But the next question is, how do we actually do that? So I'm going to talk now about some building blocks for purpose and how you can start to bring that into your communications. These are some tips from me that we've worked with some of our clients on, and we've pulled through into some of the campaigns we've created for them. And as I mentioned earlier, I've also got peppered through here a couple of our kind of gold standard, big aspirational brands who still have, even though they're, we're talking about marketing budgets with millions of pounds, but bear with me because there are definitely some key learnings that we can pull through and that you can apply to your own business and your comms around it. So the first real key recommendation I would make is to state your purpose clearly. So firstly, you need to create a purpose statement. You need to write this down, spend a bit of time, whether it's yourself, if you're an owner operator, whether it's with your leadership team or your board, and work out what your purpose is as a business and as a brand. And that, as I say, that's why you do what you do, and why that's important for your customer, and write that down. And once you've got your purpose statement nailed, you really want to work that through all the touch points you have with your customer, or certainly as many as possible, and where it feels appropriate. So on your website, in your About You section, and social media on there as well, the point of sale, whether it's on your price tags, whether it's printed on your receipts. And here are a couple of great purpose statements from brands that we know. So to create a better everyday life for many people, that's IKEA. To inspire and develop the builders of tomorrow, Lego. To empower everyone, sorry, another little technical glitch there, to empower everyone on the planet to achieve more. And that's Microsoft. And that's a really interesting one, actually, Microsoft, because that wasn't what their purpose initially was. And they only brought that through and developed that as their purpose statement after their most recent CEO came in. And I think that's a real great example of how purpose can be developed through your brand and through your business, even if it wasn't necessarily what you focused on when you established your business. There's still scope. If you're doing it authentically and if you're doing it in the right way and you're bringing people within your business on the journey to work that through and develop that as your business progresses. And Avdel Aziz, who I've referenced here, has written a great article on the power of purpose, which is on Forbes magazine. And I would encourage you to check that out because he identifies some more really great purpose statements from businesses and what makes them so special, and gives you some great tips on how you can write your own purpose statement in a really effective way. Stuck again. Here we go. Bear with me, everyone. So the next tip is to be clear and consistent with your purpose. And when you're communicating it to your audience, consistency is key. I mentioned earlier, making sure that you're working it across all your touch points, all those places that you communicate with your audience and with your consumer. Keeping it really clear as well is so, so important. Anything that's woolly, anything that feels ambiguous, anything that feels unachievable or a little bit, too kind of shooting too high, that doesn't work, and you shouldn't communicate that to your audience. Keeping it to something that you can achieve and that is really clear and powerful is very, very key. And Airbnb do this really well. So this is a great example I wanted to share with you. Their purpose statement is to help people to belong anywhere. And that kind of underpins their ethos of, wanting people to be able to go and feel like they're locals in any city in the world by, placing them in homes rather than hotels. But they actually work that through everything that they're doing, and it goes right down to their kind of core values, and they've got commitments around that as well. So for example, people who are posting their home on Airbnb need to sign up to agree that they'll be inclusive of all races, of all sexualities. There won't be any discrimination in terms of them turning people away based on any of these protected categories. So it's really important that Airbnb carry that through everything that they're doing. And actually, although this isn't necessarily like purpose driven in terms of the social responsibility side of purpose, as I mentioned earlier, there's scope when you've got your purpose identified to evolve that and pull that through into some of the social responsibility aspects of your business or anything you want to do in that area. And Airbnb, again, is a great example of that. So this is a campaign that they did in 2017, Until We All Belong. And as you can see, it kind of flows from their purpose statement. And this was to highlight inequalities in Australia around same-sex marriage and the fact that same-sex marriage wasn't possible. So it's a really lovely campaign that they did to support a cause that they really believed in and that they felt was important to engage with their audience on. My next tip is that authenticity is everything. And it's really, really so important to make sure that the message that you're sharing and the purpose that you're sharing with your audience is embodied in your business and your core values in the way that you operate and the way that you go about what you do. I always say to our clients, your audience can smell bullcrap a mile off. And if there's a whiff of something that isn't authentic, if they feel that you're just jumping onto the bandwagon to support a cause, you will really, come up against a backlash if that's the case. A great way to bring authenticity through is for you actually to bring your own voice, or even your own face, or the voice of your staff and the faces of your staff through to your communications and your marketing campaign as well. So I'm going to just show a little example of a campaign we've created for one of our clients where we did this.
Why not give a gift with an impactful story this Christmas? I'm Karis, that's Ayush, and we can help with that. That's why we started Social Stories Club, a social enterprise dedicated to thoughtful quality gifts, bursting with stories of inspiring social causes. They're curated for the social development they support and lovingly hand-packed so you can give a gift that cares to the people you care about. Find your perfect gift at socialstoriesclub.com.
Here we are, so Social Enterprise Social Stories Club, and as I mentioned at the beginning, we brought through the owners into that and had them talk a little bit in the voiceover and in the script about why they started their business and what they wanted to achieve and what it was all about, and this resonated really, really well with our audience. My next tip is to make sure that you're practicing what you preach. Although, having said that, don't preach, because your audience doesn't like that. We find that consumers in our audience don't appreciate brands telling them what they should and shouldn't do. They would prefer to be taken on the journey, to have information shared with them, and to be guided through stories and through examples of what the brand is doing themselves, rather than having brands be too direct and telling them how they should act. So here's an example of a company not practicing what it preached. So McDonald's in 2018 turned their W upside down to celebrate International Women's Day, and they received a massive backlash from critics who highlighted that the year prior, there had been a number of complaints about sexual harassment from female workers in McDonald's, which had not been addressed, and also that there was still a quite substantial gender pay gap, which had not been addressed either. So this symbol was seen as empty and hollow, and it actually did not work in McDonald's favour at all, and did not align them at all with the cause or get them positive sentiment in the minds of their viewers who aligned with the cause, simply because they didn't embody it through their practice and what they were actually doing internally. Now, I'm sure, I don't think for a second that this is an issue that you're all dealing with in your business or anything like that, but I think it is really important to know if you're aligning with causes in particular, especially if it's on social media, for example, you do need to really be clear and transparent with your audience in terms of how you are embodying or how you are dealing with and approaching those causes or those issues in your business. If you're talking about diversity, do you have a diverse workforce? Do you have a diverse board? If not, what are you doing to address that? And as I say, transparency is very key as well. If it is something that you're working on and you're addressing, being clear with your audience on that and being upfront is worth doing as well, because they will very much appreciate that. So my next tip is to nail your tone. And tone is really interesting because it doesn't actually always need to be serious or lofty when you're talking about purpose. It can be fun, it can be humorous, it can be light. Obviously, it very much depends on what your subject matter is, the purpose that you're trying to communicate to your audience, particularly if it is a cause. But here's a little example of an ad that we made for one of our clients where the tone is maybe a little bit different from what you'd expect. And I'll show this to you and then I'll talk to you a little bit about it.
Oh, what are you playing at? Aye, tossing me in here when I should be in the recycling bin there. So much doesn't belong in here. Neither do you.
I could have been recycled and held so much more, like a cereal box full of sweetness or a diary full of love.
See, we always come back. And with a little can-do attitude, I'll be back covering up your smells in no time.
Stop talking rubbish. Recycle for Glasgow.
Here we are. So Glasgow City Council wanted to do a recycling campaign in the run-up to COP26. They were very aware that it was going to be saturated with similar messaging around sustainability at that time. They wanted to cut through, but they also didn't want to be patronising or preachy to their audience. As I mentioned before, what we do find through research is that preaching to your audience really turns them off. So in terms of tone, we went for something that was fun, a little bit bold and cheeky, and grab people's attention while encouraging them to get behind their city and do the right thing. And we kind of tapped into the Glaswegian sense of pride there as well, a little bit of Gallus Scottish humour too. My next tip is to be bold. And I would always encourage you, again, I should caveat this because it very much does depend on whether being bold in your statements and your communications is suitable for the purpose that you're trying to communicate, and is it suitable for your audience that you're speaking to. But in reason, and when it feels suitable, being bold can be really important, and it's a great way to cut through and to grab your audience's attention and align with them on a core subject that's really important to you both. So here's an ad I want to show you. This is one of my gold standard best in class campaigns. There we go. Now, I absolutely love this, and it is really, really bold, and perhaps not now as much, but this was made in 2016 or 2017, and I'm sure everyone knows, but Bodyform is a feminine protection brand, and at that time it was very, very groundbreaking. They were very much the first feminine protection brand to show female blood in an ad. In the past, before that, these types of ads for similar products that would all be like, women wearing white, doing activities on the beach, riding horses. Any reference to liquid would always be a blue dyed liquid, if you remember. And it was very much, like hiding that, that visual of blood, and almost making it a taboo. And I love that Bodyform very much broke that taboo and challenged it. And as you can see in the ad, they very much encourage women to live fearlessly, and showing blood on screen, it really helped take away that stigma around periods. My next tip for you is that emotion cuts through. Again, a caveat, which probably learned alike, use it wisely. Emotion is a really powerful way to connect with your audience on a cause you both support or a purpose that's important to you both. However, it needs to be done in the right way. It can't be manipulative. It needs to be done very thoughtfully. Let me show you an example of an ad that we've created for one of our clients, and then I can tell you a little bit more about how we brought emotion through in that.
Imagine a world where we've beaten blood cancer, where thousands of lives no longer depend on donations. A future where fundraising is a distant memory, and we can save everyone's mum. Because of your donations, we could beat blood cancer in a generation. The future is in your hands. Text FUTURE to 70755 and donate today.
Here we are. So we created this ad for Blood Cancer UK. And obviously the impacts of blood cancer on individuals and families are so serious and can be devastating. However, we wanted to, instead of focusing on the sadness and engaging with our audience on that way on the topic, we wanted to take a different route and show our audience the positive outcome that could come from their donations and encourage them to imagine a world, a future where blood cancer didn't exist anymore thanks to their donations. So emotion doesn't always need to be tear-jerking. It can sometimes be very powerful if it's uplifting. The next recommendation for you is to start a two-way conversation. And having a conversation with your audience is an amazing way to deepen your relationship with them. Again, social media is a great tool to be able to do this and engage your audience in conversation, particularly if you're not at the TV stage of your marketing journey yet. And social allows you to share content so easily. You can use the space to share content on why your brand's supporting a specific cause, or why you're partnering with a nonprofit. You can share some information, as I said earlier, about why you do what you do, the reason you set up your business, what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to change in the world. You can also, when I'm speaking about authenticity earlier, I mentioned showing a human face behind the brands and the business, and social is a great place to do that as well, to share videos and images of your employees. Social is also a great place to ask your fans to submit user-generated content. And this is a great campaign that's done this, Legos Build to Give. Again, this is another real aspirational gold star one. And this initiative is a great example of a brand doing good and carrying their purpose through, which we touched on earlier, to the social purpose element of it too. So Build to Give ran for almost 5 years in the run up to the festive season. And what Lego do is they encourage families to create their own decoration. This was last year's campaign, and it was a star that families were to create, and they've to then share the decoration online using the Build to Give hashtag. And for every photo that's shared with the hashtag, Lego will donate a Lego set to a child in need, whether it's a child in a hospital, in children's homes, or from vulnerable communities, and they give away up to 1.5 million sets. So as I say, this is a really big brand, but I think such an interesting one for us all to think about. And my question to you would be, what can you ask your audience to engage with you on? And what can you ask them to challenge you to do in your business in terms of your social purpose? My next tip for you, and this is the final one, is to be in it for the long haul. And social purpose, or purpose at all, is not for a single campaign. It's not for a ribbon that you add to your social media for a specific month of the year to support Pride or whatever. It really needs to be woven through your long-term marketing strategy and your long-term business plan. And Dove is an amazing example of a brand which is devoted to its purpose in the long haul. I'm going to show you one of my favorite ads from them, and then I'll talk about it just a little bit more. So this was Dove's campaign, social media tool campaign to help girls build confidence on social media. And as I'm sure we all know, Dove's been taking on the standard of beauty with their cause marketing for years. They've done it really, really well. And now this cause that they have aligned themselves with feels really integral to their brands. It's part of their brand evolution. So again, a great example of how a brand's kind of carried it through in the long haul. And since they have taken this tact in their marketing campaigns, you'll probably know from Dove, actually, they very rarely, if ever, put the product in their campaigns. It's all very much focused on the cause and tackling these beauty ideals that are negative for women. And since they've been doing that and taking that approach, their profits have actually jumped from 2.5 billion to 4 billion. So it's a very impactful change. This is just what I want to leave you with. Purpose is powerful. It can do amazing things, as I said earlier, for the world, for you as a business owner, but it can also really do amazing things in terms of your business growth and engaging with your audience. And it can really help you achieve results. So please think about how you use the power of purpose and harness that in your communications with your customers going forward. I'm going to stop there, Emma, and I'll pass back to you, but I'm happy to take any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you so much, Victoria. That was really, really interesting. I'm always amazed at the creativity people can put into these kinds of these ads, and they're really, really effective in communicating that purpose, as you mentioned. I would just like to open up to see if anybody's got any questions for Victoria, either by raising your hand, and you can come in and unmute there, or if anybody has any questions they would like to pop in the chat. And oh, here we go. Hi, Eunice, can I ask you to unmute and ask your question, please?
Hi, thank you very much for arranging this. Victoria, amazing presentation, very insightful. I've got maybe a bit of a sharp question, so I apologize up front, but as a father of 2 teenage daughters, does Dove practice what they're preaching here, taking it from your presentation? Do they use influencers themselves to promote Dove brand or similar products who are using these retouching tools when they are promoting on Instagram and Facebook? And if they are doing it, isn't it double standards? They should then also announce at the same time, listen, we are only going to use influencers who don't use these tools.
Yeah, it's a great question, Eunice. And as far as I'm aware, I certainly haven't worked with Dove directly, but as far as I'm aware, as part of their overall purpose and their approach to beauty standards, they don't do that. And when they're using influencers, again, they are influencers who are, promoting this idea of natural, unretouched beauty. But I completely agree. And it kind of comes back to my earlier point about brands putting their money where their mouth is, and practicing what you preach, and that turns off consumers. So if you are saying something and you're getting behind a cause, or you're telling your consumers and your customers to act in a certain way or to back something, you definitely need to be carrying it through everything that you're doing. So it's a really good point. And actually, what I meant to touch on as I went through, and because I was having a few technical issues, apologies, it kind of slipped my mind, but I did want to mention on Lego as well, because I do appreciate, I was talking a lot about Lego and their purpose around developing children and encouraging children to, be builders of the future and think creatively and creatively problem solve and around that. But I'm also very aware that on the flip side, they do, their product is plastic, and there are some environmental issues that are a little bit counter to this idea of having purpose, but I do know that they're addressing that as well. Yes. And they're working towards that for 2030. So,
but relating to Dove, they're part of a major conglomerate, Unilever and so on. So if they're preaching it for Dove, they should carry it across. And even when they are doing, massive ads and billboards and so on, they should literally have this policy where they're asking these supermodels and so on, when their images are taken, that they're not retouched and so on. Of course, they should be putting makeup on and everything, that's fine. But I think it's a very sensitive topic that you've touched upon. This is an issue for a lot of parents. I'm in a fortunate position. My daughters are confident, which annoys the hell out of me. They're way too confident. I can never get a word in there. But I know from other parents that we know, they do have these issues. One of our close family friends has got this issue, and that's why it touched a nerve with me. But thank you very much for taking the time to explain. Appreciate it.
No problem. And I couldn't agree more that if a brand within a family of brands or part of a conglomerate is setting their stall by certain brand values and highlighting a purpose, that should cascade not just down, but it should flow up as well. It's definitely something that brands and conglomerates should be held accountable for. I agree.
And relating to Lego, because I'm a Viking myself, I grew up in Denmark. I know they're really putting a lot of effort into using recycled plastic to address this.
Yeah, indeed.
Thank you both. Is there any other questions from anybody in the call I'd like me to ask? I have a question meantime, Victoria. I know that you showed an example at the start of Microsoft's purpose statement, and you talked about the fact that it hasn't always gone down that route, and that has been down to some change in management recently. Quite interested to see, because I know there'll obviously be lots of new businesses that have started out recently, or some businesses who from the offset have always been very purpose driven, and that's been embedded since the beginning. If you are a business that has not necessarily always been so overtly purpose driven and you are looking to move towards that, how can you do that in an authentic way? Because I assume if you change overnight and just start plastering all of these kind of different words everywhere that's not necessarily in line with your brand, it might not seem very authentic. And it's just to see if you've got any examples of that, or what might have worked well.
Yeah, I think it's a really great question, and that's why I brought through the Microsoft example in particular, because it did feel like a really, although again we're talking about a massive international brands, but the kind of bit that I thought would be useful for our audience today was the fact that they didn't set out with that purpose and they developed it. And as I say, I think as long as it's done thoughtfully and inclusively in terms of pulling through a purpose and highlighting it and identifying it and then bringing it to the forefront of your brands, I think that's okay. What I would recommend is taking the rest of your business on the journey. So as a CEO, if you're thinking, right, this is now my brand's purpose, I'm really passionate about this, everybody else needs to be on board with that as well, or understand why that is important to you as the person who set out that business. And likewise, as I said earlier, finding that intersection between what matters to you and what matters to your customer is like that sweet spot too. So ideally, if you're trying to work purpose through, it's not just about what you want to back or what's important to you, it's about finding what matters to your customer and what's relevant to them and finding that intersection.
Yeah, great, thank you. And I can see a question that has just popped up in the chat there. So are there any social media channels that you think are more prominent than others for marketing campaigns, or does this depend on what the company is trying to communicate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it very much depends on what your message is and how you're delivering it. If you're, for example, if you just wanted to deliver your purpose statement or, support a cause, Twitter is a great way to do that. But if you're wanting to share like a video behind the scenes images of your your staff, for example, taking part in or supporting a cause actively, whether you maybe do a charity drive or something like that, Instagram is a great way to do that. So it very much does depend on what you're trying to say and showcase.
That's great, thank you. Are there any other questions? Eunice, we can bring you back in.
So again, a tricky question. So if STV and ITV and Channel 4 and Sky are holding other companies to these kind of standards, are they holding themselves not to run ads for businesses who are maybe causing, like for oil companies, ads on TV for petrol pumps and so on? Is that not a responsibility that the media companies should be taking on board as well?
Do you know, that's another great question, Eunice. And as part of STV, and I know ITV certainly as well, we're supporters of AdNet Zero, which is the advertising industry in the UK's response to climate change. And it's one of the things that I sit in the steering group actually, is one of the things that we discuss a lot, whether we should start to ban advertising, which obviously would come if there was a ban on certain sectors advertising that comes from a kind of government level. But if we should stop giving advertisers airspace on campaigns, it's certainly not something we do at the moment, but it's something that is being widely discussed. And certainly for, I know, both ITV and ourselves on our sustainability focused campaigns and products, we wouldn't allow an oil company, for example, to or a company that was making a very high environmental damage, we wouldn't allow them to sponsor it or align with it. So it's very much something that's in progress, but we are starting to make little changes where we can, and I hope as time goes on, those will become bigger changes.
Because what's really annoying is when you watch something on Channel 4 News or Sky News where they're criticizing some energy company, and right after that in the news there's a break, and the first thing they're advertising exactly that industry. I mean, it doesn't make, their credibility just goes way down at that stage,
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you. I can see another question has just come in from Lucy in the chat. So if a business would like to go down the route of television advertising, how long would this process take? Oh, sorry, you're on mute, Victoria.
Oh, sorry, Emma, I didn't realise I muted myself there. So in terms of production, from kind of like taking your brief to getting your ad on air, we would recommend around about 6 weeks as a minimum, because that gives us, particularly if you're a first-time advertiser, that gives us a good amount of time to to work with you to develop what your core message and your campaign should be for your audience, the right way to do it, and build in time for feedback. Beyond that, slightly before you get to the production stage, it really just takes our our account managers in sales a couple of weeks to be able to engage with you, pull your campaign together in terms of the airtime and the spots and what you would like to advertise around and why. We've actually got, if you go on to the STV commercial website, we've actually got a tool that you can use now called self-service, where you can price up a campaign to get a feel for, for if you wanted to be on at a certain time around certain spots, how much that would cost to give you an indication. So you can always do that if you're interested as a first step, and then get in touch with one of our account managers via the website after that. But I hope that answers, it's generally a much quicker process than people anticipate. Of course, if you want to do a really, like big shoot, or you've got really kind of, I guess, specific requirements, it can take longer, but 6 weeks tends to be a good turnaround time.
Thank you. And another note in the chat, which was, first of all, a thank you for your presentation from Fiona. And Fiona is just saying that she works for a charity, so it feels like an interesting insight. Fiona is wondering if you're building a purpose-led campaign, would that take a slightly different route depending on the outcome that you're looking for? For example, if your priority was increasing sales, or whether it was maybe just about boosting your reputation in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, when we get into developing campaigns, we would almost, although you're talking about purpose for both those things that you're trying to achieve, we would kind of split that out into whether you were doing like a branding campaign, which would be more about awareness, versus a direct response campaign, which is more about sales. And you would definitely take a different approach, and you would have slightly different messaging for either of those in terms of what you want to achieve. We would generally recommend one or the other versus trying to, smoosh it's a terrible word, but smoosh both together, because we find that the more messages you try and cram in to your campaign, particularly when you're doing TV advertising, but I think this applies to all marketing, the more messages that you cram in, the less likely it is for your audience to take any of them in. So we always say to our clients, what you want to say, can you fit it on a t-shirt? If you can, it's probably too long or too much.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any final questions for Victoria before we wrap up for today? Great, I think that's probably covered everything. It's been fantastic, Victoria. Thank you so much for your presentation. Lots of tips in there, and I hope everybody has learned something and can take away some information back into their business for that. And I think it's always really nice to see some examples, because it can be quite hard to visualize how these things actually translate into these effective campaigns. So yeah, on behalf of the Chamber, thank you so much for your time today. And to STV for their support of this event. Thank you also to everybody that's attended. I hope you found it a really useful session. Hopefully you are booked on to some of the other business festival sessions. We have another one starting in about 20 minutes actually, so that's our next keynote session with Zoe Cantonautu, who is the co-founder and CFO of FutureX. And then we have a panel discussion taking place at 3:30 today, exploring the theme of purpose-driven entrepreneurship and what that means for the future of Scotland's economy. And we've got some great speakers lined up for that. So I do encourage you to attend as many sessions as you can. And just thank you all again, and thank you to Victoria, and we'll hopefully see you again soon. Thank you.